All right. Well, thank you, Alex.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you've been bouncing around a little bit. You've been at the
I have,
Where were you today?
Yeah, so today was Blue Biotech Summit Symposium down at Ocean's Gateway that Bigelow put on with Hatch Blue, which was a great event.
Yeah.
Got some little founder showcase there and some panels. And earlier this week was the Boston Seafood Show. Fisherman's Forum. March appears to be a busy month.
Yeah. The energy around the blue economy, and especially startups in that space, it seems just to be at a crescendo in the state. And so it's a great time to be talking with you after you've been to these events and kind of surveyed the landscape. But I wanted to start a little bit with your background. Can you talk to us about some of the companies that you've been with and the positions you've held and what brought you to GMRI?
Sure. It's really just over the past couple of years that I've kind of come to understand this about myself. But I'm a translator. I studied comparative religion and Spanish literature in college, and out of college went into education. I was a classroom teacher, a bilingual classroom teacher, and was literally translating or interpreting with families or students. But then, even then, I was looking beyond just sort of the delivery of lessons to the systems behind how people learn. And more than classroom instruction, I mean, I loved working with the kids. New York City Department of Education is a beast. That part was less fun. But learning how people learn was what really kind of kept me going back every day. And it's become, I think that's kind of the theme throughout my career, is that I've looked for places where I can, I come in and I don't really know anything about about the subject area, and can use it as an excuse to learn something new. So I've worked at a range of companies, from 2 or 3 person startups all the way up through, most recently, just kind of went through a several hundred person company exiting to the largest construction materials provider in North America.
And who's
It's
that?
a company called CRH that just entered the U.S. market in 2023. I guess they were the largest producer of gravel, according to USGS. And they own a whole range of companies. They employ 30,000 people in the U.S., a $40 billion market cap. And a lot of the work that I was involved in was around water quality. Mm-hmm. So I was managing a $30 million portfolio of water quality products that, municipal scale. They go underground into storm sewers and remove pollutants. Highly regulated industry, a lot of complexity, a lot of different pathways to market, a lot of different channels. And so I was with them for about 4 years. Through the acquisition, we kind of had overlapping product portfolios that we needed to figure out how to reconcile. We had to develop a new regulatory strategy. We had to develop new pricing strategies, and kind of got through that multi-year process, and then GMRI. That was I started with GMRI this past summer.
And let's get into that role at GMRI, and it's a mix of a research institute. It's focused on blue economy. You have a cohort right now, mm-hmm. Correct?
That's right.
And can you tell us a little bit about your approach at GMRI and what you look to support and amplify through the cohort?
Sure. So really where the ventures work comes into GMRI, it's a relatively new set of programs that we offer, and they are intended to act as a bridge. Again, here's that translation thing, between the research side of the house, the education and community departments, and the market. And so what we're trying to do is bring a lot of the research findings and the expertise that we have with our scientists and our community conveners, and use that to kind of help externalize the value proposition through working with startups and innovators in blue economy. Yeah, I mean, there are some, blue economy is kind of a mushy term. It's about enabling sustainable use of marine resources. So we kind of differentiate between, oil and gas exploration or deep sea mining. Those aren't really areas that we focus on at GMRI. Defense applications there's a lot of marine innovation going on around defense and technology that has defense uses, but that's not, there are other folks, other support providers in the ecosystem that work there.
And I know at GMRI you also have, with your education background, I don't know if you touch on it much, but GMRI also has programs for students coming in to learn about blue economy as well.
Yeah,
that's an interesting balance, even within the in the organization, between your research-focused folks and the venture side or the business and commercialization side.
for sure.
Do they bleed into each other much? Do you have companies in your cohort that are maybe using some of the wet labs or partnering with some of your researchers? Is that an additive factor?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's really, I think, it's part of the thesis is we're, what our team, the ventures team, has to offer is, we've got a bunch of expertise. We've all kind of worked with founders. We've been at startups, but we're not We're not Dirigo Labs. We're not Launchpad. We're not Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. Like, we aren't trying to, do the financial planning and analysis work, or teach people how to structure their company, or how to make their first hires. Our approach is, we're going to specialize in what we can specialize in, which is, not even just ocean, the science and technology around marine innovation, but even more specifically within those areas where we can pair our current research faculty with people, with founders.
Yeah.
So ocean data and ocean intelligence, blue foods, aquaculture, and coastal resilience, community resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Those are areas where we have a whole bunch of staff at GMRI who are doing that work, and we on the venture side are acting as a conduit between them.
Fantastic. And we all kind of know the benefits of a research-based startup and coming up with early patentable products and strong technical teams. Can you talk about some of the challenges for science-based or technical-based companies coming out of the research space? There can be a transition. There could be an identity transition as well. But in your experience, can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's it's one of the biggest challenges that technical founders confront. Is they've got all of this expertise. They've got years, sometimes decades of training and knowledge of an industry or a problem set, and they've figured out a place where there's a gap and there's a need. And I think you said it well. There's an identity, there's a moment of confronting identity that is, even before you get into the problems of entrepreneurship and business formation, product definition and identifying markets. There's just and I think it kind of gets left behind a lot, but really technical founders, I think, often end up in the process of getting their business started or trying to start their business, have to come to terms with who they want to be. Mm-hmm. And if they want to do what it takes to get their vision realized. A lot of times in going through the process of defining their value proposition and pathways to market and pricing strategy, distribution channels, just the work of sales that founders have to do day in and day out, a lot of them, I think, come to terms with the fact that they don't want to be that, and either need to bring in a co-founder or an early hire that can do that, can be the suit, or they just, it's just not for that.
In my experience, you can also find it's an admirable quality. It's just coming from a research background. Sometimes there's a standard of quality. A research quality is much higher for, say, journal articles or publishing than there may be in the market, where it's, is this valuable? Can I do it? How do you coach founders to avoid, let's say, overbuilding or too much focus on their technical capability, but with limited commercial feedback? Especially in Maine, we have, in the blue economy, you have to be oftentimes out on the water to be getting your feedback, to get your testing, or your customer discovery process. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's talking to people who you think are your customers, people who are in the industry or working with the species you're targeting, or working on the water. Maybe they're suppliers, but really it's the customers. It's that process of going out and figuring out, will someone pay for what I think I've developed? And without that, that's the most important feedback loop, is being able to identify, to name, and not just when you're having a casual conversation, but to the point of letters of intent, or being able to get people signed up for a mailing list. Any sort of the greater the commitment from these prospective customers, the better. But it is absolutely I get tired of hearing myself say it, but it has to be said. And oftentimes technical founders don't really want to hear it because they come from a background where their expertise has carried them really far and they've been successful. But without talking to and being able to sort of to engage with opposition and to confront objections, if that's uncomfortable to the point of not being willing to go out and find people to talk to, you probably need to take a hard look in the mirror.
Interesting. We've been talking a little bit about product roadmaps this week and putting some structure around a strategic, align of putting one step in front of the other in terms of getting to a minimum viable product. You've been through that in real time and at a grand scale. Can you talk to us about some of the successes or failures or best practices around setting up a format for moving forward, especially from the, I don't want to say zero, but like a mid-level, early stage framework?
Sure. So, I've now done this at like you said, at 1 to N or 0 to 1. In most recently, it was replacing a $20 million yearly sort of sales budget, replacing a flagship product, and with a fully internalized supply chain and manufacturing, multiple facilities and a pretty big team, and that looks like project management as a discipline. Like I see now how in the corporate world there are, project management is something that you can go to school for, and I understand the need for certifications and what all goes into that, and I think the principles of project management are relevant to really any scale of product development and commercialization. It's having a stage gate process, I think, is really valuable.
Can you speak more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So it's the way that you have milestones as a founder. We need to get to this point before we can move forward, or before our backers will give us that next injection of cash. A stage gate process in a product roadmap sense is kind of dividing it up into phases and deciding at what point we're ready to engage with the manufacturing supply chain, for example. We have to get to a point where we've proven that the product does performs to the minimum specifications that our customers have helped us define, and that's the gate. Once we get to that point, then we're going to go and start. We're going to start picking our suppliers or choose between our suppliers. And the bigger the team, the more that you can do that in parallel.
Yeah. Can you guys talk just a little bit louder?
We'll try to, yeah. What was I thinking? Yeah, I was thinking about a product market fit as a moment, or necessarily, this sounds very much like customer-driven product development in the sense of the target that you're aiming. Is that true in that case that you're thinking of? Or?
Yeah, I think you're having. I mean, it's a series. It's iterative, right? When and in the context I'm talking about, my most recent experience was a highly regulated industry. It was a flagship product. We knew what it needed to do. There are, basically it's a hunting license. If you don't meet the regulatory standards, the product isn't going to sell anywhere. And so that's sort of a unique set of circumstances. But in the case of a sort of greenfield new product development, yeah, there needs to be a lot of customer feedback in that development process. And so really a stage gate process the first stage would be that kind of customer development where we think we've got something, but unless we get the feedback and to the point where we have people pretty much handing us money to get this product in their hands, we're not through that gate yet.
Yeah, we have. Now, can you bring that down to the cohort that you have currently? How many companies? You have 6 or 4 companies? And so you get a lot of focus on their development and deployment. And I imagine you're doing a lot of offering them the ability to work within Maine and along the coast. I think most of the companies are from Maine.
No, only one.
Only one?
Yes, all 4 are Gulf of Maine companies, but only one is located in Maine.
That's fantastic. So you're bringing in blue economy commerce to the state. Can you tell us about those companies? Or?
Sure. So they all have relevance and potential impact for the health of the Gulf of Maine ecosystem and the region as a whole. They range from working in sort of coastal infrastructure and resilience to Mr. Trey in seaweed. We have also some sort of innovations around lobster bait, and then it's sort of those we try and stick within those lanes I described earlier. There's ocean intelligence, blue foods, coastal resilience, and pairing the founders with the expertise that we have in house. The 4th founder is really developing new sort of infrastructure for researchers to kind of coordinate and streamline the data aggregation and refining process.
One thing about the companies at that stage, and likewise with here in Dirigo Labs, is that a small team can be getting a product ready, and it can be ready to start introducing to customers, or maybe already have customers. But the team isn't quite ready for that type of expansion. And there's maybe a misalignment where you're oscillating back and forth, if you're getting product ready and then catching up with the team, and vice versa. Are you seeing that with any of your startups now or in the past, where maybe the product is much farther along than the company, and we know we can expand? I know some companies here in this room, we know we have people who want to buy what we have, but we're still getting our shoes tied and ready to get out the door to go start working.
Yeah, and I think it's this is something that we've talked about, the idea that the fit between a product or a founding team and the market it's not a moment. It's a process that goes on in some cases over years. And so with some founders, it's a hard thing to come to terms with. I think it more often with technical founders, founders coming out of a research background, the idea that I know what the solution is, and the problem is the market it's common for folks to get kind of stuck on the idea that, you know, I've spent so much time focused on this problem that I know that this is the solution. And I was having a conversation, I think, just last week with a founder who's not part of the cohort, but just through our kind of open door ad hoc technical assistance program, Founder Flex, talking about, you know, this is a founder looking to bring some sort of scheduling and optimization technology to aquaculture farms around resource consumption, and you know, the focus on the problem as identified by the founder is only half of the story. And unless that value proposition can be not only communicated, which is often a struggle, just communicating succinctly the value proposition to the market, but also embraced by the market, there's no business there. There's no that's not a fit. And even, you know, you can have discovery conversations with you know, prospective customers or who you think your target audience is, and they can express enthusiasm. I mean, but until you reach a, you know, one or two or three is anecdotal, and until you get to the point where you're stacking them up to, I mean, it depends on the product and the market, but until you're really starting to get a nice line of people with their wallets out, there isn't really necessarily anything there.
That's a great point around, especially coming from science-based or research-based companies, that you can treat the startup process like it is a research issue in terms of creating the scientific methodology around, I'm going to test this many customers and see what the themes are. So I guess thinking about that, and you've recently been at some of these gatherings talking about the blue economy. You've worked outside of the state as well in some maybe more competitive financial markets. Maine has a pretty comfortable startup community in terms of having a thorough capital stack, or at least, you know, friendly participants, so that you can go out and have conversations with prospective investors or customers and get genuine feedback. And my contrast is, like, you know, Boston or New York folks who are it's much more competitive landscape for startup conversations. How does a company best take advantage of that ecosystem and the network that is here in the state?
I think you're right that this is a small place. There are a lot of opportunities, and once you start getting out and mingling and meeting people and making connections, folks are pretty willing to make the next introduction. So I think, I mean, anyone who's here now or has engaged with the ecosystem with, you know, in good faith or with any kind of you know, intention, has probably found people to help them keep moving forward. And you know, doing your research, knowing where to go for what helps. But I think you're right. There are a lot of people who want to see Maine succeed. In some ways, I think it's there can be challenges with a small place where you can run into an abundance of opportunities for non-dilutive funding, but getting from sort of the kind of next stage of funding for early commercialization can be challenging. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking at with this next iteration of the GMRI Ventures program is how can we work to fill in some of the gap between the seed and angel investors and the non-dilutive funds that are out there. I mean, even up to debt and the risk capital. We don't have a ton of equity investors that are located here, especially not focused on the blue economy. But there are plenty of people who are happy to make introductions. What we're looking at doing now is figuring out what the best mechanisms are to bring more funders into the blue economy and into ocean innovation. Because it's scary. It's marine environment's corrosive. Anything you put in the ocean gets chewed up by it. Salt water is not easy on hardware. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of uncertainty. But just speaking specifically to the blue economy, we do see an opportunity to bring more folks in who can help make some of those connections between very, very early stages and starting to scale.
Is there a focus of the energy in the blue economy space, at least in Maine or from your lens, or is it, bipolar? I'm trying to think of, is the energy in energy or seaweed or carbon capture? Are there specific things that seem to be popular right now in the blue economy space?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen over the last couple of years a lot of interest in seaweed. Obviously, the current federal landscape isn't particularly friendly toward offshore wind. Offshore wind, in and of itself, is a very a tricky subject. Other applications or instances of founders or companies getting started in marine renewables is there is still certainly opportunity there. Ocean Renewable Power Company is a great example of a success story here, and they've got some exciting stuff coming in the near future. Aquaculture and blue foods are definitely a big focus right now. I think Maine's got a great brand in the sort of consumer-oriented foods, and I think we still have a lot of room to grow there and take advantage of that. The lobster brand has done a lot for Maine, but there's a lot more that we can do off of that equity in the.
We're working on helping students with neurodivergences get accommodations for classroom instruction. It's kind of back to the clouds point, and it's there always seems to be okay. So let me frame this up a little bit. There are two really important things that are kind of bugging me about what you've been talking about. One of this is getting to that cliff from pre-revenue to revenue and be able to rely on that revenue. And how important it is to get to that point, because that's a litmus test, right? But at the same time, being able to bootstrap as long as you can. And so what I found, and maybe I'm weird here, right? But I found that there's time and money tend to be competing priorities. I can spend money to accelerate things, and I can sprint at stuff, right?
Yep.
But sometimes being fast ends up being slow too. And so maybe that lever can get pulled, but we're not pulling it at the right time. And I'm wondering, how would you advise us as founders to navigate that dichotomy between spending money to go real quick versus holding back and allowing ourselves to maybe take a little more time to get to that point? How do we prioritize those two competing areas?
Yeah, I'm afraid that I've been a little too, sweeping. Or you're such a diverse group that basically anything I say would only applies to some of you. Ed tech is and software. That's a really tricky area where, how are you going to get to revenue without a pretty polished product? Like, unless you can do it as a service, where you can, do consultancy or something, and not even do product, but like build up a business or a brand based on doing consultancy for school district or something. Like, you're going to need a bunch of cash to pay developers, or hopefully you're not going to vibe code it, get yourself into trouble, or vibe code a prototype, or you can only get so far on your own and doing it slow. If I sounded like there was, it's easy, you just build it on revenue. Not at all.
No, let's go back here real quick. I almost don't care about this answer for what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm more interested in what's the overarching principle that we can all use in here to make that prioritization, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's if.
Alex, do you mind if I jump in for a second?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Alex kind of talked about was, I think once you get that product market fit, that you know because you have paying customers, and you can see more paying customers, and now you reach a wall that says, I already built my thing, like Alex said, in jest, but I vibe coded it, or I built it as far as I could, and now my app just cannot handle more than 100 users, but I have a wait list of people looking to find. I think it signals like that. That's okay, now I just don't have that money, or even if I put my money right now, it's not going to get me exactly what I want. And I think to me, that's kind of what you were saying, is that you get that product market fit, that's a good signal, and then you have people not just on the platform, but out the door who are waiting to get in. That to me is a good sign where you're okay, now I need to go out and get more money. I think before that you can kind of do a mix of maybe angel, maybe some grant money here and there to just get you to that point where you're a little more confident to be able to take money and say, actually, I have 100 users on my platform. I've got these 200 people who are on my mailing list who are all subscribed to this thing, and I can sell to them, and then not just that, but once I can put this money in and scale my platform up to be able to take anywhere from 1,000 to 20,000 users without actually updating anything, well then I can take this money and spend it on marketing, and what Alex said to Aiden about, then you can also automatically are in a place to set up a plan for what to do with that money, what the timeline is. You're kind of you're on that racing block and you're ready to go. That's kind of when that gunshot is
I think that's a good way of summing it up. Your partner saying you can't spend any more time on this. That's not the time to pull the lever and start looking for money. Taking out a second mortgage, generally not advisable. But you've got some proof, and you're unlocking more money. You're unlocking more customers through capital infusion. That's the signal.
Yeah. Thank you. And by the way, awesome. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for coming and talking to us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
The ocean data, we're not really seeing a slowdown in appetite for using the rapid growth of data acquisition technologies on the hardware side, and then on the sort of software and analysis side, there's AI is driving a lot of growth there. And then, I mean, these are, I guess I'm a little bit biased because of our focus at GMRI. The coastal infrastructure is a critical focus. We don't see quite as much concrete innovation there, but it is electrification of vessels and ports and boat yards is, I think we're at the beginning of an upswing of that. A lot of, we just put in the first, high-speed electric boat charger at the property at GMRI at Wright's Wharf.
Congratulations.
With Island Institute, thank you. I had nothing to do with it. I can take no credit. But a bunch of folks came together and sort of through a coalition approach have made a lot of progress there. Island Institute's driving a lot of that work. So I think there's a fair bit of a growth ahead of us in terms of electric motors.
It's and just to contextualize it a little bit, because as many, if not everybody here knows, the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than, 97% of the rest of the world's parts of the ocean. And so there's a significant argument to be made that the way folks who are on the edge of innovating in the blue economy space respond here in Maine might be a canary in the coal mine or a harbinger for other areas around the world that are seeing that rapid change in temperature.
Yeah, you're right. There's no question that it's a very scary thing to confront the shifts in species distribution, where lobster landings in southern Maine are not necessarily what they were a generation ago. Mm-hmm. Black sea bass didn't used to come past the Cape, and they've definitely moved into Gulf of Maine, or at least the southern Gulf. Longfin squid. I mean,
there's blue crab marching up from
blue crab, absolutely. I mean, green crab is that's more of an invasive problem, but as much as that's not the kind of shift you necessarily want to see, there with challenge comes opportunity, and folks that can recognize opportunity to either develop new applications for species or take advantage of longer seasonality. Mm-hmm. For the tourist industry. There are ways that people are going to see success through adversity.
It's interesting that, speaking of the data, the ocean data that you were talking about, in this landscape of rapid AI development, sensors, extra data. The margins of data become more and more valuable when you're able to, one, capture it and learn from it in such a ubiquitous way, or just like such a democratized way for everybody to be able to do it. So speaking about the founders here that we have, if you're a company in Dirigo Labs, you're in Maine, you have an idea, you have a little funding, you have a team, and you have a product, what are some of the lessons from your experience that early stage founders should be thinking about, if there are some bullet points around some of the items that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the being able to reflect on your team and your product in the context of market signals is critical. Understanding what demand is in the market for your solution and how equipped you are to deliver a solution is it takes some real honest looking in the mirror, and I think we've got some AI, we've got aquaculture, some materials.
We're about 50-50 hardware and software and people building things, and
yeah. The customer development piece, I think, that approach from Steve Blank and lean startup methodology It's what, like 15, 20 years old now, but it's still applicable. I think having having a lot of conversations with people that you think are going to give you money is there's no substitute for that. And being able to it's one thing to pilot. Pilots are critical, and having an opportunity to go out and get feedback on a product is great. There's no substitute for that either. Having someone actually use your product and tell you what's wrong with it, lose some urchins from it it's valuable to learn those lessons in real time. But moving into a place where it's not just a friendly test, but it's it's pre-commercial or it's commercial. And this is someone who is, you're comfortable asking them for money, and they're comfortable giving it to you because they recognize value in what you have to offer. It's no longer something that they feel the need to test. They're ready to buy. I think there really is no substitute for that kind of understanding that you build by talking day in and day out with your audience.
And are you thinking about those as earnest conversations with equity investors for the pursuit of funding, or data capture conversations? And on top of that, are you thinking about what is the right time to know when you're ready to give up a portion of your company?
Sure. No, I mean, I was thinking more just of customers, not even getting into investors, but because really the best investors, or really everyone, the only investors anyone should really want are customers. If you can build your company off of revenue, do that. You don't capitalize. Don't give up any of your company. There are some types of companies and some scales at which you have to get some backing, but understanding. I've lost count of the number of times I've had conversations with founders or early teams, or worked with them over a period of weeks or months, and they came in with the expectation of doing Shark Tank, and eventually came to the conclusion that I don't, or didn't eventually, or pretty early on discover I don't want to exit my company. I want to grow this over the long term, in which case, venture capital is not a fit. At the summit today, during the investor panel, they said, if you can't tell me what your exit is, the conversation's over. If you don't know how you're going to get to an exit for us, as after I invest in you within the next 3 to 5 years, I can't do it. So I think there is, again, similar to technical founders coming to terms with needing to be salespeople, founders who are considering equity capital coming to terms with being with having an exit plan that is not that far out. There's really no way around it. Now that's equity, and at the venture scale is just one of the many ways of capitalizing the company. Yep, if you can do it all on revenue, do it all on revenue. There's just, so much business, so much success in our world comes from people that built a great company on a product that people wanted to buy, and could develop the company over time using revenue. And at a certain point, it might take debt, but even taking on debt is not to be, take some real reflection. And not everyone just because you need money doesn't mean that you should go looking for someone to give you money. it could be that you need to figure out how to get people to pay you for a product or a service, or you need to figure out a beachhead market that's very narrow and specific, and you know you can win there, and so that's the place that you start, and maybe you take a longer time. But it's really, investment should be, is really, you should only be going after investment if it's the only way to unlock the next scale, the next level of scale that you need to grow.
Embedded in your response there, it feels like there should be a sense of what our missions, our values within your organization,
Definitely.
even if it's one or two people, of understanding, here's what we're comfortable with in general, here's where we set our boundaries before we have to, before we get into the conversations
Exactly.
where we're forced to define them by default.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I hope some of the investors that you're bringing into the state through the Blue Ventures groups will, go inland a little bit as well to some of us in Central Maine.
That was one of the things that attracted me to this job was, in the interview process, talking to Rhiannon Hampson, who I report to. She came on a year ago. She's from Machias, and was very keen on seeing GMRI's impact outside of the Portland area, and not just up the coast, but throughout the state. Coming from stormwater, I had a really hard time with the idea that we just kind of draw a line around the salt water, and that's the only water that that GMRI serves, or at least in the venture, like, it's all one water. I mean, if it's up in the clouds, it doesn't have as much salt in it, but it rains and then ends up in the ocean. Like, there's only one water. And so, the Gulf of Maine watershed extends to Canada and into Vermont. And so that, I think, taking the broadest view of the Gulf of Maine's, region, that's, we are looking to extend our reach beyond the Portland and the coast.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm excited to see where your cohort goes, and Rhiannon is a great partner, is a great leader at GMRI, and the organization is doing big things, so very much appreciate it. We can open it up to questions now. That's about what I have to talk with Alex about. Is there anyone who has thoughts about what we've been talking about here, and questions for Alex? Josh?
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Josh. Oh, and can you let us know where you're from? Or your affiliation?
Joshua from Maine Can Fish in Topsail, Maine. Big fan of GMRI, as you know. One of my first conversations, and this was just an idea, was with Blake when she was at GMRI. But blue economy, as you said, it's a very nebulous idea, and a lot of what I think you said, there's a little bit of software here, there's a little bit of hardware, there's a little bit of startup. The blue economy tends to have a lot of large initial cost structure in the manufacturing side of it, or in the setup side when it's not a software piece. And I'm wondering a little bit about what you think of that sort of large startup cost for funding, or for the venture group, or for the state of Maine, where it comes from. Dirigo Labs is certainly helpful in that, but it's that large chunk of change for getting the company going. If you leave a university to start something, that university had all that infrastructure, perhaps.
Right.
So.
There's been a little bit of I think MTI took a step in that direction with looking at infrastructure, and it was a first step. But I think there does need to be more investment in infrastructure, both directly from the state and philanthropy, research institutions, sort of creating more shared infrastructure, but also just in creating or making funding available. And so that is one of the areas where I think we would like the next generation of ventures work to be, is in helping the folks. There's no shortage of money. It's just there's a shortage of appetite for risk, or a shortage of knowledge, of recognition of the challenges that founders face. And it's not, smart money is not going to be, they're not scared of CapEx. They're not scared of the cost of setting up manufacturing. They're scared of the unknown, in the sort of, that it's marine innovation, or that there isn't precedent, or that it's an industry that's not, maybe hasn't been as vibrant as it once was. And so that, the state is setting up the Center for a Blue Economy, which I think is it came out of the Blue Economy Task Force that the legislature created. And some of their remit will be to do, or at least facilitate, research and identifying the roadblocks, and the capital side, especially for capital-intensive manufacturing. Blue economy manufacturing is definitely, it's on the radar, but what the solution is hasn't been defined yet. And that's somewhere where I'm in, GMRI will be working toward helping find the answers that we need there. Not going to probably be the ones cutting the checks, but at least getting the right people who are cutting the checks to understand the need and start helping address it.
Who are you providing value for in the future? Because like any funder is looking for your value as being your repayment schedule, or whatever your likelihood, your viability, your credit scores, whatever. But I mean, in your case, you've got a lot of people down the road who could see you as an indispensable part of their fishing, their manufacturing, and if they can see that value much more clearly, that's something that they could invest in as well.
Yeah, there are a couple of, there's no shortage of capital, but it's not necessarily deployed the way that it needs to be. We've got a lot of donor-advised funds that maybe are underutilized. There's revenue-based financing, there's recoverable grants. There are some different financial instruments that other ecosystems are using that Maine hasn't quite caught up to, and we've got smart people who want to see it happen here, and so that's one of the focuses of my planning right now, is to figure out how to get the right people to get around the right table and start bringing in, or getting more of that capital deployed in service of the more intensive startup costs that need to be overcome. I'm not interested in making Maine into Boston, or New York, or we just want it to be what it is, just more of it, more stable, more sustainable, and your project is a perfect example of that. This is not a canneries were this we used to have it in Maine, and so seeing trying to get people rallied around solutions is a priority for us.
When you're talking about getting stakeholders around, it feels like after the January storms in 2024, there was a bit of an alignment in the blue economy around this is happening, let's all get on board. We're trusting that this is our future in terms of rising sea levels, or just greater turbulence or uncertainty in the space. Has that prevailed? Has that endured into today? Like, are you seeing the people you're thinking about around a table saying all rowing in the same direction, or they're...
To some extent, yeah. There are a couple. There's a coalition right now that GMRI is a part of that's tackling working waterfront for whatever, we've got 4-something-thousand miles of coastline, and 50 of them are working waterfront. I don't have the fact off the tip of my tongue, but it's something like that. Like 1% of our coastline is still accessible for working waterfront. And so there definitely are a lot of people who are trying to figure out solutions for that. The state definitely deployed funding for, to repair damaged infrastructure. But there are also some structural gaps. I worked in the weather industry years ago, and we have, between Portland and Bar Harbor, there is no airport grade set of weather sensors on the coast. That's a lot of very coarse interpolation that needs to happen for forecast, to apply forecast models. And that was, as far as I can tell, that was part of the problem, was that resources weren't allocated. The line crews, the road salt, those applications and staging of resources weren't done as well as they could have been done due to insufficient data. So this is one of many projects that I'd like to see happen. Senator Collins' office just got a bunch of funds for inland, for agricultural weather data network, and we need it on the coast. And I think that's, that kind of infrastructure is, I'm not sure how well recognized it is, that with the dynamics of our coastline, there are a lot of little pockets, and the impacts of storms are just impossible to predict. They're going to be really hard to predict no matter what, but we can't possibly hope to navigate increased frequency and increased intensity of storm events without better data collection.
In the insurance markets alone, I mean, it's not predicted by. There are some places in the United States that, due to these types of volatile climate changes, are uninsurable, and it's not there could be a future in that space, but for Maine, it's concerning. But data's getting cheaper to collect, and we're
Way
getting better
cheaper.
at it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's sensors are orders of magnitude faster and less expensive than they were when I was working with a manufacturer in the early 20-teens. One bit of a product market fit anecdote I can share was working in agriculture. I think it was probably 2013. I was trying to help this company get a wind sensor on top of the self-propelled sprayers, that drive around and spray pesticide and fungicide and stuff. And I'd been talking to farmers, and this product didn't exist, and the thresholds at which those operators have to turn off the nozzles, if it's blowing over 15 miles an hour, and that pesticide drifts over to your neighbor's field, you're liable for their losses. And so what these operators on farms were doing is they were taking a handheld wind sensor and sticking it out the window while they were driving along and looking at it and saying, okay, it's up to 15, I'll turn off the nozzles. And even in the 20-teens, we had the technology to put a wind sensor on the roof of the cab, and you could run it off of a phone and have a display in real time. Well, I had a lot of conversations, met with a stakeholder group, and convinced the company to develop the product, and that was an instance of the market signal was very strong. We got an order from one of the largest tractor navigation companies for 2 prototype units, and but ultimately the company wasn't ready to deliver the product. They ended up canceling the order, and I just had to eat it. But that was a case where strong signal, low readiness from the company, and that can happen. I think more often we probably see folks that are, with how cheap sensors have gotten now. There are a lot of people that want to, feel like they've figured out a solution for aquaculture and dealing with closures, And well, we can, look, we've got these water quality sensors, we can put them in the water, and we'll be able to notify you faster that the water quality is poor and you're going to have a closure. And that's absolutely true. The product readiness is very high.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. It's affordable. The solution, you can build the software, you can automate it, you can send alerts to phones. But the market readiness, in this case, it's the regulatory barrier.
Mm-hmm.
DMR is not ready isn't ready to make that change. So being able to find that alignment between what the technology can do, what I can do as a founder, or what we can do as a team, and what the market is ready to embrace is just it's a process. Product market fit is a process. It's not a moment. It's not just a finish line that you cross. It is a constant process.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
My name's Dave Salisbury. I'm with Labs Materials, and I live down in Gulf of Maine.
Cool.
I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what is the right time for a company to approach a venture group?
Well, do you know how you want to exit?
Good question. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how you need to use the money? Why you need the money?
More or less. Yeah. I think that could use some refinement, at least for my company.
Okay. And do you basically have lined up how you I'm going to spend this money with these people and this money with those people, and I'm going to hire these people, and that's how we're going to. This is the only solution is to I need this money to unlock the scale.
Yeah.
So being able to answer those questions, and then having a real strong sense of what like we said earlier, values. What are you willing to give up in terms of have just ownership, your stake in the company, for the amount of money that you need, what you're willing to give up in terms of control, because in all likelihood they're not just going to cut you the check and let you go on being in charge. They're going to have a say in the decisions, and then really I think going to investors, you should know who you want to talk to. And there's a lot of homework that goes into that, and there are lots of people who can help. But having a sense of I want to go to you. Like you are the money. I need your money, but I need your brain. I need your connections. I need your experience, your insight. It shouldn't just be about the money. If it is, you might be able to get it, or you might need to be better off looking for it elsewhere. But and bringing in an investor is my first startup experience was very much colored by having a great angel investor and then getting absolutely bogged down and ultimately derailed by the wrong investor. And so understanding not just what you're willing to give up, but what you're willing to risk in engaging with them and taking them on in the first place.
Yeah, I got to follow along too. So on the other side of it, for like a capital-intensive business, if you're thinking that you're not going to pursue venture or use venture money, what are some other instruments that can give you like the same sort of capital to do the same like, kind of big project? Because you mentioned DAFs earlier. That's something that I'm interested in. Don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not an expert either. I've been talking with an expert, and I'm excited to get her input. I think recoverable grants is an interesting one that isn't widely used here, but is something that private philanthropy does elsewhere. Revenue-based financing is a big one, where you can, I'm not going to give you stake in the company, but you're patient capital, and so we're going to work out a repayment schedule because you trust that this money is going to unlock X amount of revenue that will pay you back over time. And then, depending on the industry, and there are some, low interest loans, but like I said earlier, debt's people get into a lot of trouble with debt, and founders should approach debt with great care. But I think there are other people I'm happy to connect you with to dig deeper into it. Folks who have more expertise than I do.
Steve, have a question about?
Steve, yes?
Name's Steve. We're a startup beverage, not in the market yet, but they're novel, and one of the flavors involves a specific strain of sea lettuce. And it was delightful. An American Beer Society judge, as part of our tasting team, said it was the belle of the ball for him, but we were hesitant to take it to market. And I'm wondering if you have an insider's perspective. There's been a number of visible seaweed and seaweed-derived companies investing in outbound marketing development. What's been the adoption or the success of marketing seaweed and seaweed-derived products among the consumer products in general, if you have an insider's perspective?
I won't claim to have as much. I would be surprised if the guy sitting next to you has more insight into seaweed beverages. But the American palate is a tough one. If this is your target market, we've got a long road ahead of us for pure seaweed flavor for the American palate. But I want to kind of shoehorn in another point that I haven't made already, which is partnerships are a really great way to to get intel like that, and in some ways some coattails to potentially ride. If you've got someone, if you have experts who are thrilled with your product, and you've hit that that magic word of delight. If you're delighting people that you want to sell to, getting involved with the right strategic or channel partnership can just unlock. There really is. There's no. Again, I said no substitute too many times tonight, but there really is so much value in a good channel partner or good distribution or strategic partnership like that. I think approaching the right corporate, if you can find someone who's more established, not necessarily a big corporate, but just another player who's in the industry, and find a way to work together. I think it's easy as founders to be very wary of the larger established players and just see them as the competition. But in a lot of cases, there's a happy marriage to be had with the right established company. Yeah, sorry I can't offer you more expertise. Got something, Trey?
Do you have time for a question?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Oh, yes. Alex, I love hearing you talk. You have a great voice and you say good things. My question, before I respond to him, and saying, we sell seaweed to people who make, I was just saying earlier, seaweed-infused gins and vodkas. It may be worth reaching out to them to see how it fits into their product mix and what their sales processes are. My question is really soliciting a comment from you. You had said, if you can fund through revenue, that's always preferable. And I just wanted to add some nuance to it. One, I think certain businesses you can fund through revenue. I have a friend and colleague who has an engineering company and he sells his products direct around the world. And it's basically him in Wisconsin selling this stuff, and it works out great. So he could do that. I think folks like our beverage company, they can make a decision to be a regional beverage company and still have some success. But I also think there are companies that if you do not scale, you will die. and, you know, I can think of certain technical solutions that other people will just basically steal your thunder and go national with it and wipe you out. And so I think the revenue thing, and I really, I'm not saying it's a challenge in any way, I'm saying really more feedback from you to see if you see that nuance as well, and like how would you make the determination of what category you fit in?
No, I appreciate that, Trey. I absolutely would not say that everyone should finance. You can't. You're 100% correct. There are companies that for whom, yes, it will have been a project that will, you know, hit the end of the runway and you know, and be dead without funding to unlock the next stage of growth. You know, I'm just about my entire career has been in B2B, so the consumer world is it's a little bit of a mystery to me. And I think that's maybe it's more common to have, you know, developed a prototype and found some small scale of success and product market fit, and then, you know, in you know, CPG or food and bev, and then be at the point where, okay, I can't just do this on revenue, or it's not realistic. So I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a metric or a heuristic to kind of say, these are the kinds of companies that should, you know, try to grow only through revenue, and these are the ones that shouldn't. I wish you know, systems that's, you know, you're like flicking the systems part of my brain on. I'd love to figure out a way to do that and you know, build a decision tree or something to say, here, you know, if this then that, to figure out what under what circumstances you should you know, really try to grow through revenue, and what cases are what industries or what types of solutions are going to. I mean, anything that involves CapEx, you know, any meaningful you know, infrastructure, manufacturing facility that can't be done through toll manufacturing or contracting or partnership, yeah, those are probably going to be in the bucket of, yeah, you're going to need some big chunk of cash to build out operations, but or, you know, anything that is, you know, one of you know, your colleagues in our cohort, they are at, you know, once they hit a certain scale, they're going to need to hire a bunch of developers, and that's just, you know, that's venture. You know, that's it's not a debt play. You want a partner who's going to come in and has seen that sort of that SaaS model and can help you go through, navigate all the pitfalls, and they're the smart money. But no, I'd love to figure out. You got my gears turning thinking about what's a way that we could build a sort of a decision tree or flow chart to should you try and bootstrap your
Alex,
revenue?
to your point, I think my heuristic for that generally is, I think maybe too cliche, the time is money thing, and I think if you have enough time that you're not going to die, and you can buy that time doing, like, for example, simplest example, the SaaS platform, you can build it yourself, or you could get money and have like a lot of money to get the developers and do the marketing and go to market quickly, because you need to get to the market because someone else is otherwise going to grab that
Yes.
niche.
Yep.
You want it. But if you can, you're basically buying, if you held off the money, you have time, but you're buying time, or doing the opposite, where you're shedding time to market by getting the money involved. I think that's one of the heuristics I would involve in that. The other part would be, what you said about if you have a CapEx expense, you have a CapEx expense,
Yeah.
you could sell your product at, you know, whatever margin, and if you still can't get to the point you will need to raise for that. I think that's a good one where you,
Yep.
generally even physical and manufacturing,
Yeah.
likely that's something you want to go into. And one of the other things that you kind of talked about earlier with I believe that it was like when you raise venture capital, the way I like to think about is they're buying your company, but you're buying their influence, their network. You're not just like giving your company your money. You're actually also trying to get the best deal you can. If you can give your company to 3 investors, they're all of course going to be giving you the same amount, or maybe if you have different contract, whatever, but you also are getting something else from them, and that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, and Catherine, I think you had a question?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Catherine. My company is Sava. It's an AI-powered platform for life sciences. I actually wanted to ask a little bit more. You mentioned in the beginning how technical founders have to look in the mirror a bit and decide whether they really want to sell. What have some models that you've seen work well or not? You know, if someone makes that decision, is it looking for co-founders? Is it the first critical hire? Is it, you know, saying, okay, I'll do this for a year to get it off the ground, and then I'm going to make that critical hire? Can you go a little deeper into?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's again, that's another one that's a process. I don't. There may be a watershed moment where you just, I don't want to be this person that I'm trying to be. It may happen like that, but it also could be really gradual. And so I think you know, there are great resources. As a technical founder, you bring a level, or hopefully a level of enthusiasm and passion for your the industry, the sector that you're trying to serve, and a belief in and a very well-informed belief in the solution that you've developed. And so I think taking kind of putting aside the Glengarry, Glen Ross, like always be closing, the used car salesman, a lot of the, you know, sales is a dirty word for a lot of people. And as a technical founder, it's you don't have to be one or the other. I think having, you know, if you get to the point where you have just, you've worked every angle at your enthusiasm, and you've tried to distill your message into, you know, Mad Men style copywriting. You've worked at every different direction that you can, and you know that there is something there, but you aren't you've concluded that you can't be the one to bring it there. Then I think that's a time when you look at either I imagine, depending on where you are in the process, it may be a co-founder, and finding someone who is aligned with your values and can do can be the businessy person, and being able to come to terms with them is a good option. But I don't say that lightly. I recognize that finding someone that you can really believe in to be your partner is it's huge. It's like you're getting married. I mean, it's a co-founder relationship, especially one where you are the founder and you are bringing in someone to do the business side. Like, that is a massive undertaking. And so, to whatever extent you can bootstrap it and bootstrap the business side based on your whatever amount of sales DNA you can inject into yourself, I think is the way to go. And humans we're story-driven animals, and one of the things I've learned is that science is nothing if we can't tell the story. And I think some of the best, some of the my favorite kind of research is stuff that comes along that's partly told through art or through great storytelling. I think that's how we get the messages out there. And you, by getting as good as you possibly can at telling your story, you might find that the right partner kind of self-selects and comes to you. If you can tell your story well enough, if your story gets out there and what you're doing becomes clear to enough people, it can take on a life of its own, and a good partner will seek you out, or they might. No promises.
Well, that's a nice tone to end on. Was there one more question back there? No?
Yeah, one more?
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I mean, so